In just 8 minutes and 43 seconds, a libertarian congressman from Kentucky exposed the biggest cover-up in FBI history. Thomas Massie didn't just ask questions, he named names, 20 of them. FBI Director Kash Patel thought he could deflect with bureaucratic doublespeak. He thought wrong. What did this former MIT engineer turned politician reveal about Jeffrey Epstein's client list that made America's top law enforcement official freeze like a deer in headlights? The answer would shake the foundations of power from Buckingham Palace to Hollywood, from Silicon Valley boardrooms to the halls of Congress itself. The Hart Senate office building felt different that Tuesday morning in March 2025. Room 216 had hosted countless oversight hearings, but whispers in the corridors suggested something unprecedented was about to unfold. Congressional staffers who'd been working late into the night, legal pads covered in redacted documents and highlighted passages, moved with the urgency of people carrying explosives. Security was tighter than usual. Capitol Police had received vague warnings about significant revelations that could impact national security interests. 3 additional Secret Service agents had been quietly assigned to monitor the proceedings. The press gallery, normally half empty for routine oversight hearings, was packed with reporters from major networks, independent journalists, and even foreign correspondents who'd heard rumors that something explosive was planned. Thomas Massie had spent 6 weeks preparing for this moment. The congressman from Kentucky's 4th District wasn't known for grandstanding or political theater. An MIT graduate with degrees in electrical and mechanical engineering, Massie approached problems like an engineer, methodically, logically, relentlessly. When he discovered something was broken, he fixed it. When he found something was being hidden, he exposed it. But this case was different. This wasn't about government overreach or constitutional violations, issues that had defined much of Massie's congressional career. This was about children, trafficked children whose voices had been silenced by power, money, and institutional cowardice. The breaking point had come during a classified briefing on federal law enforcement priorities. Massie had asked a simple question about resources allocated to investigating Epstein's associates. The evasive answers and nervous glances between Justice Department officials had triggered his engineer's instincts. Something wasn't adding up.
For months, Massie had been quietly building his case. His staff combed through thousands of pages of FBI documents, court filings, victim testimonies. What they found wasn't just a dead billionaire's secrets. It was evidence of a massive federal cover-up involving some of the most powerful people on Earth. The night before the hearing, Massie sat in his Capitol Hill office until 3 in the morning, reviewing the manila folder that would change American politics forever. Inside were FBI Form 302 interview summaries, sworn statements from victims naming 20 specific individuals who had participated in Epstein's sex trafficking operation. Titans of industry, entertainment royalty, political elites. And according to FBI documents, the Bureau had done absolutely nothing about any of them. "They think Congress won't ask the hard questions," Massie told his chief of staff as dawn broke. "They're wrong." Meanwhile, Kash Patel was confident. Too confident. His preparation focused on deflecting routine questions and defending counterterrorism efforts. His team had prepared talking points about transparency and ongoing investigations. But they had underestimated Thomas Massie. "Massie's a gadfly," Deputy Director Nicole Parker assured Patel. "Nothing we can't handle with standard responses." How spectacularly wrong they were. At exactly 10:15 a.m., the hearing began. Chairman Chuck Grassley called the session to order. The press gallery was unusually full. Patel took his seat at the witness table with practiced confidence. Dark suit, American flag pin, FBI credentials prominently displayed. Behind him sat FBI lawyers with briefcases full of legal objections. Everything was choreographed for another routine hearing, but Massie had choreographed something else entirely. The first hour proceeded as expected. Republican senators asked about Chinese espionage and border security. Democratic senators probed Russian interference in domestic terrorism. Patel delivered practiced responses with smooth confidence. Massie sat quietly, taking notes, watching, waiting for his moment. At 11:23 a.m., his moment arrived. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Massie began, his Kentucky drawl deliberate and measured. "Director Patel, I want to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein investigation." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Reporters leaned forward. Camera operators zoomed in. Patel's expression didn't change, but those watching closely noticed his left hand gripping his pen just a fraction tighter. "Specifically, I want to discuss the constraints that prevented full investigation of this case," Massie continued, opening a thick manila folder. Patel nodded, probably thinking this was heading toward familiar territory. "But those constraints only apply to the Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to the Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents." The mention of Form 302s sent a visible ripple through the FBI legal team. These were internal bureau documents not meant for public discussion. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, Massie's voice grew stronger, these documents, in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jes Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to. The room exploded. Not literally, but the energy was electric. 20 men, not vague allegations, but specific FBI documentation, and Massie had just named one on live television. Patel's face remained carefully neutral, but those watching closely noticed his left hand gripping his pen just a fraction tighter. But Massie wasn't finished. "Victims, including minors such as Virginia Robertsky-Frew," he said, his voice carrying profound respect. "May she rest in peace." The tribute was brief but powerful. Virginia Robertsky-Frew, the brave woman who had spent years fighting to expose Epstein's trafficking ring, had died in a car accident just months earlier. Massie was honoring her memory by doing what the FBI apparently wouldn't, demanding accountability. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, Massie continued, reading from his folder with engineering precision. One Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. Each category hit the room like a physical blow. Royal prince, rock star, 6 billionaires. This wasn't just about Jeffrey Epstein anymore. This was about a global network of elite predators, meticulously documented in FBI files, systematically ignored by federal law enforcement. The press gallery descended into controlled chaos. Reporters frantically typed on phones and laptops. Congressional staffers exchanged shocked glances. Even seasoned FBI officials looked genuinely stunned. "We know these people exist in the FBI files," Massie said, his voice cutting through the commotion. "The files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does." And then came the devastating question. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people? And have you seen these 302 documents? The silence that followed was deafening. For 3 or 4 seconds that felt like an eternity, the most powerful law enforcement official in America looked like a man standing in quicksand. Patel's response was pure bureaucratic evasion. "Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress to divulge that information." Word salad designed to fill time while saying nothing. Pounce, Massie pounced. "So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to probable cause?"
The question was surgical. Either Patel was calling trauma survivors liars or admitting the FBI had ignored credible evidence of crimes against children. The exchange continued, with Patel desperately deflecting while Massie pressed forward with relentless logic. When Massie asked if Patel had personally reviewed the Form 302 documents where victims named their abusers, the FBI director gave an answer that would be replayed on every news program for weeks. If I personally have? No, but the FBI has. The admission was staggering. The FBI director, the man ultimately responsible for the Bureau's most sensitive investigations, had just admitted he hadn't personally reviewed victim statements documenting 20 alleged participants in a global sex trafficking ring. It wasn't that the documents didn't exist or were classified. He simply hadn't bothered to read them. Massie's response was devastating in its simplicity. So how can you sit here in front of the Senate and say there are no names? Patel tried recovering, claiming the FBI doesn't release incredible information, accidentally using FBI jargon meaning not credible to describe victim testimony. After minutes of deflection, he had revealed the Bureau's real position. They didn't believe the victims. As Massie's questioning time expired, the room remained in stunned silence. In less than 9 minutes, a soft-spoken congressman from Kentucky had exposed what appeared to be the largest federal cover-up in modern history, not with bombast, but with methodical presentation of documented facts the FBI itself had collected and buried. The immediate aftermath was unprecedented. Within minutes, clips went viral across every platform, generating millions of views. Cable news broke into programming. But the real earthquake happened behind closed doors. FBI field offices across the country erupted as agents who had worked the original case realized their findings had been systematically buried. Within 72 hours, the story exploded internationally. The BBC led with headlines about FBI covering up royal Epstein connections. French media investigated billionaire involvement. Scotland Yard announced comprehensive reviews. Swiss banking authorities began examining suspicious transactions. Conservative media turned sharply critical. Tucker Carlson devoted an entire segment to questioning how the FBI could ignore evidence involving royal princes and rock stars. Most damaging was the FBI's internal reaction. Special Agent Sarah Chen, a 20-year veteran, testified that colleagues had been ordered to stop pursuing leads because suspects were politically sensitive individuals requiring special handling, too powerful to investigate. 3 days later, Patel's position became untenable. Agents questioned his leadership. The Inspector General announced investigations. Trump called the handling very concerning and suggested new leadership is needed. Patel's resignation blamed political attacks, but everyone knew the truth. Thomas Massie's 8 minutes and 43 seconds had ended his career. The broader implications extended beyond one man. Americans had concrete evidence that federal law enforcement was protecting elite predators. Multiple administrations had access to these files. Career agents recommended investigations. All were ignored. 6 months later, a new FBI director announced reopening investigations into all 20 individuals. Several arrests followed, though many avoided prosecution. The names remained classified, but their existence was no longer secret. Jeffrey Epstein's victims finally had validation. Sarah Ransom called Massie's questioning the first time anyone in government treated us like human beings rather than inconvenient reminders of powerful people's crimes. Virginia Roberts Giforis's family praised Massie for honoring her memory by demanding the truth she died fighting for. The Epstein case remained a cancer on American democracy, but Massie's methodical exposure demonstrated that Congressional oversight, when conducted courageously, could still hold powerful institutions accountable. His engineer's approach, facts, evidence, logical progression, succeeded where years of political theater failed. In an era of division and institutional decay, one man's commitment to truth reminded Americans what real oversight looked like. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a badge or subpoena. Sometimes it's just an engineer from Kentucky who refuses to accept non-answers to simple questions about justice for children who had been failed by every institution designed to protect them.